In this chapter we're going to have a look at the effect of making falling snow. This is actually quite a simple example. As we go on through this DVD we're going to make each example a little bit more complex than the last generally, and hopefully each example will introduce new concepts. Now in this effect what we're actually trying to achieve is pretty obviously the effect of falling snow. To that end I've made a little set, and in that set, as you can see, we have a kind of canyon which we're at the bottom of, and I've used a gradient ramp to actually give us a sort of grey sky with the gradient going down towards the horizon. As you can see, you've got snow falling down from above. Some of it passes quite close to the camera and obviously is falling off into the distance as well. As effects go, this is actually quite a simple example. But that kind of makes sense because we've been through the other DVDs in the series. We've seen various elements of particle flow in isolation, and now we're actually looking at putting together flows for the first time. So it's a good idea to actually keep things quite simple at first. I'll quickly run you through what the scene is actually made up of, and once we've done that, then I'll actually show you the flow, and we'll have a look at the various elements of it and so forth. Now, as I said, even though this is actually quite a simple example, it can be used as the basis for a more complex example, where you use more forces, more localized forces around objects to give, for instance, swirling snow, eddies in the snow and so forth. Or if you wanted to, in this particular example, for instance, the cliff actually has no effect on the snow whatsoever. The snow actually flies through the cliff. And the reason for that was just to keep generation of the particles quite fast, and not to get bogged down with super realism. As I said in the introduction, none of these examples are actually meant to be, full-on finished examples of an effect that could be used in a motion picture. They are there to teach you exactly how particle flow works, to put things into practice. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the assets that we have in our scene. We have a plane here, which I'll show you is quite detailed. If I go down to the plane in the modifier panel, you can see that it's got 150 segments by 150 segments, so it's obviously very detailed. There we go. If I turn off show end result, you can actually see what it's like before we do anything to it. And then this is just mainly for the render more than anything. This is not anything of any importance for the actual particle effect. If I go up to the next modifier, you'll see we've got a displace turned on, and if I bring up the material editor and shrink this down a little bit so it fits on the screen, you'll see that we have a material here called rocky surface, and I believe there, if you have a look at the modifier, you can see it's been used to actually displace the mesh, to push it out a bit and give it this kind of rocky appearance. On top of that, I've got this shader here which is called snowy rock, this material, and the only thing clever about this material is that it's using fall off, using towards and away, using the world z-axis, and what that's actually doing is it's only putting snow on the upper facing normals of the final rendered surface, and that's actually accurate to the bump map as well. So the bump map will actually perturb the normal, and that will actually cause the snow to only appear on the areas of the surface that appear to be facing upwards. Obviously it's not a real piece of geometry or anything, it's just a shader sort of trick, but it's quite a useful thing, and it's a very interesting technique. Here we've got a black material. It's called matte. It's not actually using the shadow matte material. In this case it's just literally a black material, which is used to matte out the cliffs when I'm actually just rendering the snow. When I did the final render on this, I actually rendered out the cliff walls separately, and then I actually comped in the snow afterwards just using additive color. And here we actually have the snow material, which you can see here. You can see it's got, if we go down to opacity, you can see it's actually got a mapped opacity here. You can see that it's self-luminous up to 30. That actually just gives it a kind of an ambient light to the snow to stop it getting too dark when it's not actually been hit by any direct light. And you see we've got a diffuse color here, which you can see we're using a fall-off map, which is using this gradient. If I turn this off here, you can see this is the gradient, and this in combination with this gradient ramp, which is